Okay, welcome everybody. I believe it's about 12 o'clock, so I'm going to make a start. My name is Dr. Lucy Akehurst. I'm the head of department at the psychology department at the University of Portsmouth. As you can see, I'm going live from my own home, working from home today during the pandemic. So yes, rather more informal setting than if I was in my office at the University of Portsmouth. But I thought what we could do just for the first 5 or 10 minutes of this Q&A is that I could give you a broad overview of our undergraduate courses, our psychology courses at the University of Portsmouth. If you have a question for me, pop it into the chat. I'm working with my colleague, Josh, today. And so if I see a question that I can answer, something about the academic content of our psychology courses, then I will answer straight away. If it's something that I think Josh will be better able to answer for you, then I'll ask Josh to answer your question in the text box. So without further ado, I'll talk a little bit first of all then about courses. At Portsmouth, we have a BSc in forensic psychology and also a BSc in psychology. Okay, they're both 3 years full-time courses or 6 years for part-time courses. Okay, and both of our degrees are accredited by the British Psychological Society. I'll just give you a very brief overview of the content of the courses. So the BPS, the British Psychological Society, they dictate that we teach certain things on our undergraduate programs. And what we choose to do at Portsmouth is to pull those BPS core areas into our second year. So the first year, students cover perspectives in psychology, also applying psychological research methods, which has a really nice practical element to it. We have a module called Exploring Psychology, which has all of our tutorials embedded within it. And then we also, dependent on your degree, if you're studying forensic psychology, you pick up your forensic psychology in the first year. If you're on our straight psychology degree, then you study animal behaviour as well in the first year. In the second year, as I said, we pop the BPS core topics in there, and we teach biological and cognitive psychology, social and developmental psychology, individual differences, quantitative data analysis, and also we really pride ourselves at Portsmouth on helping you to become employable graduates. It's one of our key strengths and our key aims. So all the way through the second year of both of our undergraduate programs, you study all year on a module that we run called Professional Development and Employability. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, because there's loads of opportunities for work placements within that module. So that's the first and second year. Because you've done all those BPS areas in the second year, it's all options in our final year, which again is a real bonus to the courses at Portsmouth. So whatever psychology is so broad that whatever you think your interests may be, through the first and second year, you'll really have a great idea about that by the time you get to the third year. And I'll give you a little flavour for some of our options in the final year. So you could study issues in clinical and health psychology. You could study educational psychology. We've got an introduction to teaching in there as well. There's comparative and evolutionary psychology. If you've become interested in animal behaviour, comparative psychology is about comparing species. So comparing humans to other species. So that's an option in the third year. We have forensic psychology for the students. Even if they're studying the straight psychology program, they can pick up some forensic psychology in their final year as a module, an optional module there. Neuroscience is an option in the final year. The social construction of disability, professional practice in sports psychology. So you can see where I'm heading with this. Whatever kind of professional route you think you want to go down, whether it's clinical or sports psychology or education or forensic psychology, there's some for you in our final year. You choose 4 options in the final year. And along with those, you study a project, an independent project, where you work with just one member of staff. They're your supervisor for your project. And you work closely with them. You come up with your own research question. So again, this is how you can really tailor-make that final year for yourself. The options and the project on your own research question. This is another really good aspect of our degree courses at Portsmouth. You might visit other virtual open days or other live Q&As, and you'll find that in the final year, the staff set the research questions for the final year projects. But as I say, in Portsmouth, you would choose your own and you'd work closely with a colleague on that project all year long. And I'm going to give you a few examples of undergraduate final year projects. So we've got the user's ability to detect and identify criminal behaviour using CCTV footage. We've got emotion regulation in attention to food-related images and obesity. Another really interesting one, okay, detecting lies via computer-mediated communication. Do liars use different verbal cues than truth tellers? Being stuck in the middle. Does middle child syndrome really exist? Was another example of a project. Are children with autistic spectrum disorder capable of deception? So you can see this broad scope really for your final year research project. And you would do that alongside the 4 options that I mentioned earlier. At Portsmouth also, I said I was going to talk about work placement opportunities. We have small, medium and large pack of that. And actually you don't have to choose one of those. You could go for all 3 of those. So our small work placement opportunity, if you like, comes in the 2nd year. And I mentioned we have this year-long module called Professional Development and Employability. Between Christmas and Easter of the 2nd year, in that module, you can choose to go on a work placement. Okay, so that's factored into your timetable, and you would go out for a certain number of hours to work in the field in a work placement. Our medium work placement opportunity comes in the final year. With those options, one of them is psychology work placement. This means that you would study 3 of your options as regular modules on campus, but your 4th option would be to work in a placement, usually for about 1 day a week for the whole of your 3rd year. Excuse me, and we would make sure obviously that that didn't clash with any of your lectures for your other 3 modules and that it didn't interfere with your project work. So that's the medium-sized opportunity, if you like, to that work experience that's really, really valuable on your CVs to go alongside your academic studies. The large placement opportunity is that for both of our undergraduate degrees, I'm really sorry, for both of our undergraduate degrees, you can do them as sandwich year degrees. So if you choose, and you don't have to make the decision, by the way, straight away. So you can join our undergraduate program, study the whole of the 1st year, but then kind of at this time, just before Christmas in the 2nd year, you just make the decision whether you'd like to do the sandwich or not. And if you do, then you work out in industry. You might work in a private sector organisation. You might work for the NHS. You might work in a school, a college. You could work in the UK or abroad. You could study abroad as well. So you make use of that sandwich year as you want to, and that's between your 2nd and 3rd year. You take the whole year away from uni, in other words, and make your degree a 4-year course. So those 3 small, medium and large opportunities to work, to get some great experience and to pop that on your CV alongside your psychology undergraduate degree. We really do pride ourselves on those opportunities, and because of those and because of that 2nd year module, we have a fantastic rate of our students going into either further study, postgraduate study, or into employment when they leave their undergraduate degree at Portsmouth. We're far, far higher in our statistics for that than many other psychology departments across the country. We really do help you to be employable graduates and to help you to find your path through to where you want to be. One other thing I want to talk about before we kind of go to Q&A are our tutorials. So when you arrive with us in Portsmouth for an undergraduate programme, you are placed with a group of tutees in your year group. Usually the groups are between 8 and 10 students, and each group works with 1 member of academic staff. That's your tutor, and you have your tutor for the whole of the 1st year, the whole of the 2nd year. So you become very familiar with your little tutor group and with that particular member of staff. Take a lot of students in Portsmouth, usually about 250 students across both the psychology and the forensic psychology programme. programs. So of course that's loads of people. You don't want to be turning up on your first week and trying to get to know all those people. So the tutorial system is lovely in that it affords this opportunity to get to know one member of staff and that smaller group. And as I say, you see that tutor group once a week through the first year, once a fortnight all the way through the second year. And when you get to the third year, you switch then, and your project supervisor, and I spoke a bit about the projects earlier, your project supervisor becomes your tutor for the final year. So lots to think about there. As well as tutorials, I should say that we also have office hours. Every single member of academic staff has 2 office hours a week, so we can pick up things for our tutees in tutorials, but of course we're all module coordinators as well. So what we find is we need to have an open door policy for office hours for students to come and chat to us about the modules that they're studying. And those are, so the COVID pandemic has been really tricky for us all to manage. We think we've managed it really, really well at Portsmouth. I have to say all of our office hours have moved to Zoom, but our tutorials have been on campus. So a lot of students who've been to come onto campus to have that kind of contact have seen their tutors for 2 hours every week since September. They've had that lovely, consistent on-campus experience of coming in with their tutor group and meeting their tutors. For students that weren't able to come onto campus, then we've been able to contact those students through Zoom. But it's been a little bit of both this term. At Portsmouth, we've done some on-campus teaching and we've done some online teaching. We've called it at Portsmouth something called the blended and connected approach to teaching. We totally recognise that if people have moved to Portsmouth, they're paying money for halls of residence, then they wanted to come onto campus and see us. We've offered that provision, but equally we flipped to Zoom as well to deliver some of our content. Just having a quick look at my notes before I start to look at the questions. Our assessments, you might be interested in our assessments. We have varied types of assessment. There are some essays, traditional essays. There's a lot of practical work at Portsmouth. We pride ourselves in our labs. We have great lab facilities, great equipment in the labs, and a super community whereby students and staff work together all the time. And one indication of that is that as students, you can book the equipment and the labs just as easily as the staff can. Everything is open to you as students. So the assessments, yes, sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. We do a lot of lab reports. So we do a lot of experimental reports with an abstract, introduction, method, results, discussion. It's a very practical course. We also have oral presentations. We also have poster presentations. When you do your final year project, you don't just hand in your written work, but you have an interview about it afterwards, because we think these are all good employability skills. To have a brief interview about a big project that you've worked on is going to really help you when you then go off and try and get those jobs that you really want. So a real variation in assessments. We have a gold award for teaching at the University of Portsmouth. And I hope just in this tiny brief talk you've seen why that might be. It's our pastoral care, it's our tutoring system, it's giving you the skills that you need to get on after your degrees. Our entry requirements for September 2021 is 128 UCAS points, okay, and that's an ABB in letter language if you're doing your A-levels. We need 7 GCSEs at 4 or above, or C or above in old terms, and those must include maths, English and science, those GCSEs. So 7 GCSEs, and then ABB at A-level or equivalent. We obviously offer to people doing BTEC, so we just look for equivalents to 128 UCAS points. Right, I'm going to start to glance now at the questions. You'll have to bear with me. This is quite a foreign thing for me. I'm much better at chatting than I am at looking at this. Chloe asked, what is the current amount of students you have on the psychology course? Chloe, I don't know if you caught it, but I did say we have usually between 240 and 260 students. And to make the maths easy, we normally take about 200 onto our BSc psychology degree. The maths easy, we normally take about 200 onto our BSc psychology degree, and about 50 onto our BSc forensic psychology degree. Okay, Matthias asks, are there benefits to doing a placement year? Can I study abroad on the course? Yes, 100%. I think there are benefits to taking a placement year or studying abroad. We were part of the Erasmus programme, and you may have been listening to the media recently. We're just not quite sure what's going to happen with the Erasmus programme with Brexit. Erasmus is where we were paired, and we still are paired with partnered with universities in other European countries, where our students would go out to those countries for the year between second and third year, and we would welcome students from the other universities to us for a year. So we've got to wait and see how the government goes on the Erasmus scheme, but there are opportunities. It really strengthens your CV to either work or to study abroad. Thanks for the praise, Edwin. Edwin's asked, East or West Portsmouth University is best? Not quite sure what you mean, Edwin. We're one campus, so the Department of Psychology is in King Henry building of the university. It's quite central to the city. It's not a campus university as such, but the University of Portsmouth buildings are all dotted around quite close to one another in the centre of Portsmouth. So it's a bike ride or a walk between all the different buildings, and that includes halls of residence. So halls of residence, the rooms where you have your lectures, all our big lecture halls. The psychology department, as I say, is in King Henry building, all quite central. And student accommodation, so people tend to live in halls of residence in their first year, right near all the lecture buildings. In the second and third year, they tend to take the southernmost edge of the Portsmouth. Portsmouth's actually an island, and a lot of second and third years live in Southsea, which is at the southernmost part, so looking out across the water to the Isle of Wight. Okay, could I transition to postgraduate after the course? Yes, no problem at all, Chloe. At Portsmouth, we offer an MSc in forensic psychology and an MSc in health psychology, and you could transition, and Portsmouth graduates get a discount on those two MScs. Of course, you might not fancy health psychology and forensic psychology. There's a whole world of postgraduate psychology courses, so you could switch to another uni for those studies. Most postgraduate courses in psychology require a 2-1 or higher. Good. Matthias asks, how was or will COVID affect things next year? Goodness me, it's the $1,000,000 question. I think that with the vaccines, we are quietly confident. We're hoping anyway that we will be back to a bit more normality from September, let's say. That said, we've managed actually very, very well to transition to, as I say, this blended and connected approach at Portsmouth. A bit of everything, a bit of on campus and a bit of online. I have to say, guys, if you are thinking of coming in September, I think you might just find some really great resources, because we've had to work so hard this year to get a lot of stuff online. We're not going to suddenly take that away. So I think what you might get is some really boosted up online materials that we've prepared for this year, along with all the normal on-campus lectures, tutorials and seminars. So I think a great year to come to university, September 2021. And my colleague Josh has popped a website up there that you could click on if you want to move over to look at some of the postgraduate courses, Chloe. Any other questions, guys? No, there's no pressure, obviously. We'll wait a while longer. So strange not to see people's faces, just to be waiting. Is there student support on the course? Huge amounts of support. It's honestly one of our strengths, I think. So I'll just reiterate again what I said about our tutorial system. Those personal tutors will work closely with you. You'll see them every week through the first year and every fortnight through the second year, and then you'll be with a third year project supervisor in your final year. Now, on top of that, Matthias, that's kind of for academic study, but you can also talk about personal things in your home life with your personal tutor in the psychology department. But what those tutors will also do is signpost you to all of our other resources at the University of Portsmouth. We have a fantastic health and wellbeing centre. We have finance support, accommodation support. We have support for students with disabilities. So there are lots and lots of other kind of what we call service departments to help our students beyond their academic work. So what the personal tutors will do is always be the first port of call for students. They'll chat to students and they'll hear what's worrying you and troubling you, and then they may help themselves, or they may signpost you, as I say, to some of our colleagues in those other departments, if they are colleagues in those other departments, if they think that those people might be able to help you a bit more. So yeah, lots and lots of student support. It's a very friendly community-based university, and I have to say, especially the psychology department within the university. Yeah, sure. So the facilities are, so the psychology department, as I say, is in a big building on the campus. We have the ground floor of that building, King Henry building, and the first 3 floors. And we have labs kind of positioned on all 4 of those floors. So on the ground floor, we have a baby and infant lab, which is great because mums and their babies and infants can come in with buggies, and we have changing facilities there. So the baby and infant lab has observation areas where we can observe through one-way mirrors, one-way mirrors or mirrored, you know what I'm saying, and with cameras for observational work. We have a motion capture lab where we can film from loads and loads of different angles, human and animal movement. We have a psychophysiology lab where you may have seen photographs of people wearing caps, and we can monitor their brain activity, EEG activity, with caps. So that's in our psychophysiology lab. We also have a polygraph in our psychophysiology lab. We have a perception lab. We have a large group of colleagues. So let me just talk a little bit about, in psychology at Portsmouth, there are 4 main research centres: forensic psychology, interaction, development and diversity is another big research group, the quality of life, health and well-being, and also comparative and evolutionary psychology. One of the labs that I missed out just then is our dog lab. So we have a dog cognition lab. There are a lot of researchers at Portsmouth interested in primate behaviour, dog behaviour, horse and equine behaviour. So that's big with us. So there are 4 areas of specialism. And when you're listening to people chat about the psychology departments around the country, always have a really good look at that and see which departments people are specialising. You know, how are they specialising? Because we don't all do everything, and it sometimes can sway your decision when you find out that a particular university has a lot of research in a particular area. And as I said, you as students from the word go can book those labs and those pieces of equipment. We have a lot of also individual kind of quite small experimental cubicles. So if you just want to invite a research participant in for your project, you can invite them to a cubicle which you've set up with the equipment that you need, especially, for example, to record them visually or audio record them, and you just set that up with the equipment that you need. Nice question, Chloe. What's my favourite module? Do you know what? I'm a forensic psychologist, guys. So I I don't know whether you are. I think I didn't mention properly the final year options for the forensic psychologists. So if you're in the forensic psychology pathway, you could choose the psychology of offending behaviour, the psychology of investigations, psychology of security, or trauma memory. But I'm biased in those kind of modules. So the other thing is, if you're on straight psychology, I think I said that you could study forensic psychology as a module in the final year. Kind of things we would teach on that are from the moment someone's arrested right through to possibly going to prison. So police interviews, detecting deception, who's lying and who's not to the police, then going to court, juries and jury decision making. Okay, and then if it's a guilty verdict, that person might go to prison. What kind of interventions and assessments do forensic psychologists do to try to help offenders in the prison environment? And then they might go out on probation. More forensic psychologists there. So it's a real journey from kind of getting into trouble with the police. What are some of the precursors to committing crime, especially for young people? We have a bunch of colleagues interested in that. So it's through the whole kind of process of committing a crime to maybe goes into being released. Loads of opportunities there for forensic psychologists to be involved. Of the BPS core areas, and I don't know if you've got your head around this yet, but there's social psychology, developmental psychology, biological and cognitive, individual differences, and also research methods. There are 6 things that the BPS say that we should teach. And of all of those, I really like social psychology. So that's things like groupthink, in-groups and out-groups, prejudice, persuasion, and those kind of things. Thank you, Matthias. That's really kind. Have a lovely Christmas break. Okay, I think I'm going to log off now. So thanks, Matthias. Thanks, Josh, for helping out.